teachers of Reddit. How obvious is it when one student has a crush on a classmate? I once intercepted a note from a boy to a girl that, roughly translated from French, said, "I get hard for you. Do I make you moist? I've done it before. Wanna do it?" This was 8th grade English. Our Casanova wasn't the brightest bulb in the packet, but he had advanced visceral competencies. Not a teacher, but I had an amazing teacher. She knew I had a crush on this girl, and she might have known she had a crush on me. All high school assigned seating we were put next to each other. All projects we did together. She put us together for everything. I'm marrying that girl in 4.5 weeks. Thanks Mrs. Perez. Depends on the age, but the signs are obvious as hell. Lots of staring, and not so obvious but very obvious attempts at being near them. Visible disappointment when they aren't put in the same group for group work. Jealousy in all forms. I've seen a kid hate a classmate for weeks because that classmate sat next to the kid's crush for morning meeting. Everything with students is obvious. I know who you have a crush on. I know when you and your friend got in a fight and aren't the same today. I know when you are having a bad week. I know when you've lost motivation. I know when you're looking for attention, and I know when you want to be left alone. Some teachers use this information to make informed decisions, like sitting you next to your crush, cutting you slack that day, asking if everything is alright, etc. But I've seen some use it to be unfair to students. Edit. Thank you for the silver. I'm glad to hear some positive stories of caring teachers from people. I work at an alternative school with kids who have lots of trauma from their past. I think if you cannot be compassionate, you shouldn't be in this profession. But I understand many have had negative experiences with teachers who shouldn't have taken the career path. Shout out to my high school econ teacher for noticing that me and a girl were into each other. Constantly putting us in the same group. Straight up asking the girl if she had a boyfriend while I was in the room. Mrs. Anderson is the best wingman of all time. What's even more obvious is when one has a crush and the other isn't interested. I'm speaking strictly from the demographic from my own school I taught at, so I hope it's clear I'm not generalizing all teenagers here. But I've noticed, when a girl is crushing, and the guy isn't, he is more likely, but not always, to be more forward about telling her so, to the point, in 1 or 2 cases, of sometimes being openly cruel to her. The girls in the reverse situation act annoyed and will sometimes make their disinterest clear, but more often than not they grin and bear it and try to pretend the crush doesn't exist. That's all I've got. I was there 4 months. I'm unfortunately one of the cases where I've been openly cruel to the girl who likes me. She's a friend from high school and we are going to the same college, but for the last couple years her and I haven't been on good terms. I don't even want to be her friend anymore, but she doesn't leave me alone, and then a few months ago she told me she likes me. I immediately said it wouldn't ever happen, respectfully, but she kept saying how much she likes me, way more than the typical crush apparently, and I've gotten so annoyed to the point where I've been rotten to her. She also keeps reminding me of how I've been treating her about it, but also doesn't want to stop talking to me. I really don't get it. I remember one time during an 8th grade field day hearing a bit of an altercation between a few kids. When I went over there I saw that this one very nerdy kid was chasing another boy around the football field, while a few other boys laughed, and a girl was telling them to stop. Turns out what happened was that one of those boys was teasing the girl, like that kind of stupid teasing 8th grade boys do to girls they like, and that the nerdy kid, who also seemed to have a crush on this girl, stood up to the boy to defend her honor and wanted to fight him. So instead of fighting, the boy ran in circles while the nerdy kid chased him, furious and red in the face. It was very cringy. I got the vibe that the girl didn't mind the teasing from that boy and that the nerdy kid's crush was probably not reciprocated. I broke up the fight, partly because I wanted to save the nerdy kid from his 8th grade self. I think most of us have been in a situation as a teenager where we try to impress someone who doesn't feel the same way. I didn't want him to look back years later and be even more embarrassed by it had it gone on longer. I can't believe how infatuated with a crush I was in grade school. First day I had to stand in front of the class and introduce myself. I caught her eyes and I was done. Then I found an open seat behind her. She had a cute ponytail and always smelled amazing. I imagine just leaning my head in and letting her hair tickle my face. I always tried sneaking close in lines etc, and surprisingly we often did sit next to each other. During field trips she'd suddenly get talkative and burst out telling me things. Other times like skiing we both were silent on like mice, alone together on the lift. I just wanted to push my hand across and hold hers. During a class show and tell I brought an MRE in. She asked if she could keep the hot sauce. Of course she could. I remember sneaking up to her house and leaving a bushel of flowers I picked at her doorstep, then running off like I robbed a bank. I prayed she'd see it and hope it was from me. I wanted her to feel how I did, but I never talked about it. I was leaving the state when my father left for the war, 2003ish, and seeing one of my teachers. She asked if I said goodbye to the girl. No, why would I? I said bye to everyone already. I was so nervous about my feelings being known. She just smiled, rolled her eyes, and said you should. Later the girl had a party at her house, and next thing I know she invites me to her room. 2 others follow with us. I was mad they did, but her room. The girl of my childhood dreams. I was so nervous to finally catch a glimpse. I remember trying to study it, to know her better, because I was too scared to just ask. When I looked up and saw it, on her cupboard was a small bottle of Tabasco I gave her. She immediately turned red, picked it up, and looked at it in meaning glances. You leave soon, right? It was like getting hit in the chest at dodgeball. I said yes, I had to, and fear/butterflies/pain kept me from ever telling her more. Looking back it's so obvious and even her friends and mine all knew, but neither of us ever said a thing. Still have her on Facebook. I think she went to med school and is a doctor. Boyfriend. The crush isn't there anymore, but the feeling of regret or never acting on it lingers. For you young adults, take that as a lesson. You might never see the person again. Love rarely lasts, but it's better to shoot the shot than to look back on chances never taken. At least then you have a story to laugh, not a thought that makes you quiet. Not a teacher, but I took a foreign language course last year, and I had a thing for this girl who used to sit in the front row while I sat in the last. I rarely made eye contact with her, never stared at her, never talked to her, just didn't know anything about her. As always, I was a pain in the ass, so I was always getting attention of everyone in the class including the instructor. That being said, one day I was disturbing the class as usual, so the instructor asked me to sit beside the very same girl I had a thing for. How did the instructor know? Student here, but one time my 8th grade my teacher overheard me talking about a girl I liked, Jessica, in the class, and I had to stay after school because I was the class clown for lack of better words. She asked me why I liked her. She was a cool girl, and I said something like she's really pretty, but also nice and sweet, but I'm not popular enough to be in their group. They'll just think I'm weird. The next day the teacher came up with a class project where we had to work in pairs and she grouped me with her. After working with her for a few days we became friends and I realized she was kind of a douche lol. Beneath the sweet and kind facade was like a total a-hole. Learned a lesson in looking for more than popularity or good looks. Bless my 8th grade teacher's heart. So obvious. I'm an ESL teacher in Latin America, and when I suspect there's some crushing going on, I purposefully put those students in pairs to see how they interact. There's a lot of unnecessary touching like, oh, let me point at this thing in the book, but I need to go around you and hang off you to do it. Then, I put them in different pairs, the girl with another potentially eligible guy and vice versa to see how they react, and it's usually with daggers. They're so distracted, they don't really work on whatever they're supposed to be doing, because they're too busy trying to see what's happening with their crush. It's really quite entertaining. I thought it was obvious, but I could 100% tell girl 1 really liked this one guy. She always tried to sit near him and work with him on projects. I could tell he wasn't interested and always ended up working with girl 2. I figured maybe he had a thing for girl 2. Turned out to just be an agreement with her so the girl 1 wouldn't get to work with him because soon after he married girl 3 who he had been dating all along, and I had no clue. Uni students, they were in their mid-20s when they got married. I kept in touch with the couple after they graduated, and we are good friends now. I had a group of kids where it was obvious like 3 different boys had a crush on this one girl. They were all friends but all kinda argued at different intensities and different times about who would sit next to her. I could never tell how the girl felt other than wanting to be their friend, except for one time. One of the boys asked her something along the lines of if she had thought about it and she answered, in obvious frustration from having been asked a bunch, "No, not yet." Those two didn't sit next to each other for a while.